It was a quiet Sunday morning. I sat in my small apartment drinking coffee, feeling content with my simple life. Most people in my family thought I was a failure, a dreamer who never grew up. No fancy car, no big house, no prestigious job title. What they did not know was that behind closed doors, I had built something they could never imagine. That peaceful Sunday morning, my phone rang. It was my mother, she said. The whole family needed to talk to me. It was urgent. Before I tell you what happened next, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below. And if you have ever been underestimated by the people closest to you, if you have ever felt invisible to your own family, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Trust me, you are going to want to hear how this story ends. Now let me take you back to how it all began. I grew up in a middle-class family in Ohio. My father, Richard, was a retired accountant who spent 40 years crunching numbers for the same company. My mother, Barbara, was a former school teacher who believed in rules, structure, and doing things the proper way. They raised 3 children, and somehow I always felt like the odd one out. My older brother, Derek, was everything my parents dreamed of. He graduated top of his class, went to law school, and became a partner at a prestigious firm by the time he was 35. He married a woman named Sandra, had 2 beautiful kids, and lived in a 4,000-square-foot house in the suburbs. My older sister Patricia followed a similar path. She became a pharmacist and eventually opened her own pharmacy. She was independent, successful, and always knew exactly what she wanted. Then there was me. I was always the different one, quiet, creative. I preferred working alone, sketching designs in my notebook instead of studying for exams. While Derek was winning debate competitions and Patricia was acing her chemistry tests, I was in my room dreaming about building something with my own hands. My family never understood that. They saw my quietness as laziness. They saw my creativity as a lack of focus. And they never let me forget it. I remember one Thanksgiving dinner about 3 years ago. The whole family was gathered around the table, passing dishes, laughing at old stories. Then my father looked at me across the table and said in front of everyone that he wished I had half the ambition Derek had. The room went quiet for a moment. Derek looked uncomfortable. Patricia smirked. My mother just sighed and changed the subject. I felt the sting of those words deep in my chest, but I did what I always did. I smiled, stayed silent, and helped clear the dishes after dinner. That was the pattern of my life. No matter what I did, it was never enough. After high school, I enrolled in business school because my parents insisted. They said it would give me direction, but after 2 years I felt suffocated. The traditional path everyone expected me to follow felt like a cage, so I dropped out. That decision nearly destroyed my relationship with my family. My father called me a quitter. My mother cried for weeks. Derek offered to get me an entry-level position at his law firm, and the pity in his voice made me feel smaller than I had ever felt in my life. He said it would at least give me a start, something to build on. I politely declined and told him I had my own plans. That made things worse. They thought I was too proud to accept help, too stubborn to see reason. After that, I worked a series of odd jobs. I was a barista for a while, then a delivery driver, then a freelance graphic designer. None of these jobs impressed my family. My mother called me every week to ask when I was going to get a real job. Patricia stopped inviting me to family gatherings because she was embarrassed to explain what I did for a living to her friends. I became the family disappointment. The cautionary tale they whispered about when I was not around. But what they did not know was that 3 years ago I started building something of my own. It began small. I noticed a gap in the market for personalized handcrafted leather goods with unique designs. I had always loved working with my hands, and I taught myself leatherworking through online tutorials and countless hours of practice. I started making wallets and belts in my tiny apartment, selling them on Etsy for modest prices. That was when I met Emily. I was at a local craft fair, nervously displaying my work at a small booth when she walked up to my table. She was selling handmade jewelry at the booth next to mine. We started talking, and I quickly realized she was not just talented but brilliant. She had a degree in marketing and years of experience helping small businesses grow. More importantly, she understood my vision. We became partners. I handled the design and craftsmanship. She handled the marketing and operations. We worked out of my apartment at first, then rented a small workshop space when we outgrew my living room. We kept everything quiet. No social media presence under our real names. We operated under a brand name that had no connection to either of us. For 2 years we built that business brick by brick. And by the end of that second year we were making 6 figures annually. I never told my family. Part of me wanted to wait until I had truly made it, until the success was undeniable. But another part of me knew that even if I told them, they would dismiss it as another pipe dream. They had already made up their minds about who I was, so I stayed silent. I let them think I was still struggling, and I kept building. Then came that phone call on that Sunday morning. My mother's voice was unusually formal, cold even. She said the whole family was gathering at Derek's house that afternoon. She said it was important, something about the family's future. When I asked what it was about, she just repeated that I needed to be there. After I hung up, I called Emily. She listened as I told her about the strange call. Something felt wrong, I said. The tone of my mother's voice, the vagueness of the reason. Emily told me to be careful. She reminded me that no matter what happened, we had built something real together, something no one could take away. I thanked her, got dressed, and drove to Derek's house. The drive took about 40 minutes. I watched the familiar streets pass by, the autumn leaves falling from the trees, the neighborhoods getting bigger and more expensive as I got closer to my brother's house. With every mile, the knot in my stomach grew tighter. Derek's house was exactly what you would expect from a successful corporate lawyer. A large colonial-style home with a perfectly manicured lawn, a 3-car garage, and an American flag hanging by the front door. When I pulled into the driveway, I noticed several cars already there. My parents' sedan, Patricia's SUV, and an unfamiliar black Mercedes that looked expensive and official. As I walked toward the front door, I saw the curtains move in the living room window. Someone was watching me arrive. I rang the doorbell, and Derek's wife Sandra opened the door. She gave me a tight smile but did not make eye contact. That was unusual. Sandra had always been friendly to me, even when the rest of the family was not. Something was definitely wrong. Inside, the living room had been rearranged. The furniture was set up in a circle like a meeting room or an interrogation chamber. Everyone was already seated. My father Richard sat in his usual armchair, his face stern. My mother Barbara was beside him, clutching a tissue. Derek sat across from them with his arms crossed. Patricia was next to him, looking at her phone with practiced disinterest. And in the corner, a man I did not recognize. He wore an expensive suit and held a leather folder on his lap. I was directed to sit in the center of the circle, the only empty chair. An awkward silence filled the room. I tried to make small talk, asked how everyone was doing, mentioned the nice weather we had been having. No one responded. My mother just dabbed at her eyes with the tissue. Finally, my father cleared his throat. He said they needed to have a serious conversation. About me, about my future, about the family. Before he could continue, my mother started crying, not soft tears, but deep, heavy sobs. I reached out to comfort her, but she pulled away. The man in the suit introduced himself. His name was Gregory Walsh, and he was the family's estate attorney. That was when I realized this was not a normal family meeting. Derek took the lead. He said they had been worried about me for years. He used words like concerned and disappointed and tough love. He said they had tried everything to help me, but nothing worked. Patricia chimed in next. She said it was embarrassing to have a brother who had accomplished nothing at his age. She listed my failures like she had rehearsed them. Dropped out of school, no stable job, no wife, no children. Living in a tiny apartment at 32 years old. My father shook his head slowly. He said he did not raise a son to be a burden on society. My mother, through her tears, said she prayed for me every night. But prayers were not enough anymore. Something had to change. Then Gregory Walsh opened his folder. He began reading from legal documents, his voice flat and professional. The family had decided to officially remove me from the family trust. My grandfather had left a significant inheritance that was supposed to be split 3 ways between Derek, Patricia, and me. But now it would only go to Derek and Patricia. I was being written out of the will entirely. Gregory explained that the family cited my lifestyle as evidence that I would waste any money given to me. They believed this was in my best interest, a wake-up call that might finally motivate me to change. Derek nodded solemnly. He said it was for my own good. Patricia agreed. She said they were doing this out of love. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands started shaking. I looked at my mother, hoping to find some support, some sign that she disagreed with this. She looked away. I looked at my father. His jaw was set. No emotion. Gregory slid a stack of papers across the coffee table toward me. He asked me to sign acknowledging that I had been informed of the family's decision. I stared at the papers. The words blurred in front of my eyes, but they were not finished. Derek leaned forward and said there was one more thing. He said he had hired a private investigator to look into my life. He wanted to understand what I was really doing with my time, who I was spending it with. The investigator found out that I had been meeting regularly with a woman named Emily. Derek's voice dripped with condescension. He assumed Emily was some romantic relationship, that I was being financially supported by a woman because I could not support myself. He called me pathetic. Patricia laughed. She said she always knew I could not take care of myself. My father shook his head in disgust. My mother cried harder. I sat there, surrounded by the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I had never felt more alone in my life. They had been watching me, judging me, planning this for months, and they never once thought to just ask me what was going on. I thought about all the sacrifices I had made for this family over the years. Helping Derek move into his first apartment when he was just starting out. Lending Patricia money when her pharmacy was struggling in its first year money she never paid back. Taking care of my parents' house whenever they went on vacation. Being there for every birthday, every holiday, every family emergency. None of it mattered to them. I sat in silence for what felt like an eternity. Everyone was watching me, waiting. I could tell they expected me to cry, to beg, to get angry and storm out. That was what the old me would have done. But something shifted inside me in that moment. It was not anger. It was clarity. I realized I had spent my entire life seeking approval from people who had already decided I was not worth believing in. No matter what I achieved, no matter how hard I worked, they would always see me as the family failure, the disappointment, the burden. I was done. I stood up slowly. I did not touch the papers on the table. The room tensed. Derek leaned back in his chair. Patricia put down her phone. My father's eyes narrowed. I spoke calmly. My voice was steady, controlled. I asked Derek a question. How much did he make annually as a partner at his law firm? He looked confused. He glanced at Patricia, then at my father, then back at me. He said around $250,000, give or take. I nodded. Then I turned to Patricia. I asked about her pharmacy's annual revenue. She looked annoyed. She said it was none of my business. But after a moment she admitted it was around $400,000 before expenses. I smiled slightly, just a small smile. I told them I wanted to share something with them. Since they had gone through the trouble of hiring a private investigator, I thought they should know the full picture. Because clearly whoever they hired did not dig deep enough. I pulled out my phone and opened my business banking app. I walked over to Gregory Walsh and showed him the screen. I asked him to confirm what he saw. Gregory's eyes went wide. He cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. He said it appeared to be a business account, with a current balance of $1.2 million. The room went completely silent. I explained everything. 3 years ago I started a business selling handcrafted leather goods. Emily was not my girlfriend. She was my business partner and one of the most brilliant marketers I had ever met. Together, we built a company that operated under a brand name, which was why the investigator never connected it to me. Our products had been featured in several major publications. We had clients all over the country, including a few celebrities who preferred our custom work. Last year alone, our business generated over $2 million in revenue. I had been quietly building wealth and success while my family assumed I was failing. I never told them because I wanted to succeed on my own terms, without their judgment, without their interference. And honestly, I knew they would not believe me anyway. They had already decided who I was. The reactions around the room were almost worth the pain of the last hour. Derek's face turned red. He stammered, asking why I never said anything. Patricia looked like she might faint. The smug expression had completely vanished from her face. My mother stopped crying. She just stared at me with her mouth open. My father's expression shifted from disgust to confusion to something that looked almost like shame. Gregory Walsh quietly closed his folder. He suggested that perhaps they should revisit the estate documents. Perhaps reconsider the decision to remove me from the trust. Derek quickly agreed. He said this changed things. He suggested they forget about the whole disowning process. Patricia suddenly became friendly. She smiled and said she always knew I had potential. She always believed in me. My mother reached out to grab my hand. She said she was so proud of me. I pulled my hand away. Gently, but firmly. I told them no. I said I would not sign their papers, but not because I wanted the inheritance. I told them I did not need their money. I never did. What hurt was not being cut out of a will. What hurt was that they never once asked me about my life, my dreams, my work. They assumed the worst. They hired an investigator instead of just talking to me. They planned to cut me out of the family over assumptions and judgments. That told me everything I needed to know about where I stood with them. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. I walked toward the front door. I turned back one last time and looked at each of them. I said I hoped that one day they would understand that family should be about support, not judgment, about lifting each other up, not tearing each other down. Then I walked out without waiting for a response. I drove away from Derek's house with my hands still shaking on the steering wheel. But despite the trembling, I felt lighter than I had in years. A weight I did not even know I was carrying had been lifted. I called Emily as soon as I got on the highway. I told her everything that happened. She listened quietly, not interrupting, just letting me get it all out. When I finished, she said she was proud of me, not for revealing the business, not for proving them wrong. She was proud of me for walking away with my dignity intact. We met for dinner that evening at a small restaurant we loved. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, I finally let myself process the day. I admitted to Emily that I felt grief, not for the money or the inheritance. I felt grief for the family I wished I had, the family I always hoped they would become. Emily listened. Then she said something I will never forget. She said family is not just blood. Family is the people who show up for you, the people who believe in you, even when you are still figuring things out. By that definition, she said I already had a family. The days after the intervention were hard. I went through waves of emotion. Some days I felt strong, liberated, free from the expectations that had been suffocating me my entire life. Other days I wondered if I should have handled things differently. Maybe I should have told them sooner. Maybe I should have given them a chance. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and texts from family members. My mother left voicemails apologizing, asking me to call her back. Patricia sent a text saying she wanted to talk, that she did not mean what she said. Derek sent a long email explaining that he was just trying to help, that he never wanted to hurt me. I did not respond immediately. I needed space. I needed time to heal. I threw myself into work. There was comfort in creating in the feel of leather under my hands, in the satisfaction of crafting something beautiful from raw materials. Emily suggested we expand the business, open a physical studio where customers could see our work and where we could teach classes. I agreed. Having a new goal helped me focus on the future instead of dwelling on the past. I also started attending a support group for people with complicated family relationships. I discovered I was not alone. So many people had experienced similar rejection from the people who were supposed to love them most. Hearing their stories helped me understand my own. It helped me realize that my worth was not defined by my family's opinion of me. 3 months after the intervention, I agreed to meet my mother for coffee. We sat across from each other at a small cafe near my apartment. She looked older than I remembered, tired. Her eyes were red like she had been crying. She apologized, sincerely this time. She admitted she was wrong to go along with the intervention. She said she let fear and the opinions of Derek and Patricia cloud her judgment. She was afraid I was struggling and she did not know how to help. So she went along with their plan, thinking it was the right thing to do. I told her I forgave her, but I also told her I needed boundaries. I could not pretend the hurt never happened. We could rebuild our relationship, but it would have to be slowly, with honesty and respect. She agreed. She said she would do whatever it took. A few weeks later, I met with my father separately. That conversation was harder. My father had never been good at expressing emotions or admitting when he was wrong. He sat across from me in silence for a long time, struggling to find the words. Finally, he said he was sorry. He said he was raised to measure success by money and titles, and he had judged me by those standards without ever asking what success meant to me. I told him I understood, but I also told him I could not accept that definition of success. My success was building something I was proud of, creating with my own hands, finding a partner who believed in me. We parted on civil terms, not fully healed, but with a door left open. As for Derek and Patricia, they remained distant. They sent occasional texts, but there was always an awkwardness, an unspoken tension. I accepted that our relationship might never be what I once hoped it could be, and I made peace with that. 1 year later, the business had doubled in size. Emily and I opened a studio in downtown Columbus. It was everything we had dreamed of, a beautiful space filled with leather tools and the smell of hard work. We hired a small team and started mentoring young craftspeople who reminded me of myself at that age. Dreamers, creators, people who did not fit the traditional mold. I found fulfillment not just in the work, but in building something meaningful, something that would last. I also built a new circle of people around me. Emily, of course. A few friends from the support group who understood what it meant to heal from family wounds. Fellow business owners who shared my passion for creating. My relationship with my parents slowly improved. It was tentative, careful, like learning to walk again after an injury. But it was progress. I no longer sought their approval. I had found my own validation. I even started volunteering, teaching leather crafting to at-risk youth at a community center. Seeing their faces light up when they created something with their own hands reminded me why I started this journey in the first place. Everyone deserves to feel capable. Everyone deserves to feel seen. Looking back, the hardest part of that experience was not being disowned. It was realizing that the people I loved most had never truly seen me. They looked at me and saw a failure, a burden, a disappointment. They never looked deeper. They never asked questions. They just assumed. But that pain became a gift. It forced me to see myself clearly, to define my own worth, to build a life based on my own values, not theirs. I learned that success is not about proving others wrong. It is about being true to yourself. And I learned that forgiveness is not about excusing behavior. It is about freeing yourself from bitterness so you can move forward. Sometimes the people who should lift you up are the ones who hold you down. And sometimes walking away is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. If you are watching this and you are in a similar situation, if your family has underestimated you, dismissed you, or made you feel like you are not enough, I hope you find the courage to define your own worth. Because at the end of the day, the only approval you truly need is your own. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever been underestimated by your own family? Have you ever had to prove yourself to the people who should have believed in you from the start? Share your story in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know your experiences can help others who are going through the same thing. If this story touched you, please hit that like button. It helps more than you know. And if you have not already subscribed to this channel and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story, share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. You never know whose life you might change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And remember, no matter what anyone else thinks, you are worthy. You are capable, and your story is not over yet. Take care of yourself.